So how do we escape the nightmare that is the HOA if we can't just leave HOAs altogether? Well, the answer to that is we're here to help you with that. And if you like that, or that resonates with you, like and subscribe to this channel because that's what we're all about. So today we're going to be talking about escaping the HOA nightmare. Why are we talking about this? Well, most of my comments that I get on this channel, because we talk about almost exclusively HOA and condo association stuff, most of the comments are about how HOAs are terrible, evil, corrupt organizations and how you need to escape them as quickly as possible. And I sympathize with people who are saying that. Just because I'm a property manager for HOAs and condo complexes does not mean that I think they are great institutions. As a matter of fact, I personally I wouldn't live in an HOA or condo. However, I understand why they exist and I understand that a lot of people do. And so I try to make content to help them. It doesn't mean I endorse it. It doesn't mean I love it. It doesn't mean that I would want to live there myself or own property there. Although at certain points in my life I have, and I currently still do own one property in an HOA. Depending on the situation and the application, it's fine. But I get people's frustration as to why they feel that HOAs are terrible and why they're a nightmare. And it's kind of because I agree that I make this content. It's because that I think they're deeply flawed institutions that I feel the need to spend all of these hours every week making content for you guys, trying to explain to you how they work so that you guys don't have to live in a nightmare. Because I think education or a lack of education around how HOAs or condo associations work is what leads to all of these terrible experiences. And if more people were educated or better educated on what HOAs and condo associations are, why they exist, and how they can live their life differently so that the HOA experience isn't so awful, or at the very least know what to expect going in, then my hope is that through this channel and through this content I'm making, I can save people a lot of grief and heartache and pain and misery and legal fees, if they listen to this content and apply it. So the first thing I want to talk about is why do HOAs exist? Because everybody's just don't move to a house that's in an HOA. Just don't buy an HOA in an HOA. And that's really easy for a lot of, pundits and just random people behind a keyboard to say. And I swear half of these people probably live in their mom's basement. Because if you've tried to buy a property in the last 10 years, you'll know that single family homes on their own plot of land are getting increasingly rare and astronomically expensive. And a lot of people are moving to HOAs because it's less expensive in a lot of ways, because they interpret it as being a significantly less amount of work for them to maintain it and mow the lawn and, make repairs and do whatever it is. But it's how HOAs and condo associations are kind of a Ponzi scheme being perpetuated by towns and municipalities. And at the most basic level, the reason why it's that way and the reason why towns and cities and municipalities are almost requiring that all new construction be inside of an HOA or condo association is for this simple reason. They're running out of money. They're running out of money to maintain roads. They're running out of money to maintain water lines and sewer lines and, electrical lines and all of this infrastructure that is required to have a city or town. And as different parts of our country are aging, they're realizing that this repair work is really expensive. It's a lot more expensive than it was 50 years ago. I mean, yes, you have basic inflation, but you also have the fact that fewer and fewer people are getting into the trades. And therefore, tradesmen and people who know how to do this expansive level of construction is harder to find. And the insurance requirements are harder. And the bid process and paperwork is harder. I know a lot of great contractors that just aren't good at paperwork or computer stuff, and they could probably do the job, but because they can't get me the right paperwork and insurance and all the other stuff that the city and state make you go through filling out forms and getting licenses and permits and approval. Like a lot of guys who could do great work don't, because they're not good at the paperwork or administrative end of it. And so what happens is these become niche services with fewer skilled labor to do those services, which makes these trades more expensive at a faster rate than the basic economical inflation. So not only is inflation eating away and making things more expensive, but also these, like building roads and building sewer lines and water treatment and all of these skilled trades are becoming more and more expensive. And the town doesn't have the money to do this work. They're not collecting enough taxes to pay for the work. And by the time they collect enough money via taxes to replace a road, they're already still paying off the debt from the last time they replaced the road. And they're still 10 or 15 years away from paying off that debt. And now they've taken on new debt because it would take them 50 years to collect enough taxes to pay for that road replacement. But a road needs to be replaced every 25 years. So now they're already behind the 8 ball. So what's the solution? The solution is HOAs and condos. And why is that the solution? Well, because you're building homes that you pay property taxes on, right? So you're building homes that you are the town or the municipality is charging normal tax rates based on the size of the home. So it's a 2,500 square foot home. They're charging it like it's a 2,500 square foot home, and you're paying taxes on it like it's a 2,500 square foot home. However, all of the infrastructure associated with that new home is private because it was built inside of an HOA, which means the developer paid to put it there, and the homeowners are gonna pay to replace it in 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Therefore, the town gets to double dip on taxes. They get to charge taxes to those homes in the HOA without really providing any additional services, because they're not maintaining the new roads. They're not maintaining the new water systems or infrastructure or sewer lines or catch basins or any of the other stuff that goes into an HOA. So the town's double dipping on taxes, and the homeowners that are buying into an HOA are basically paying double because they're paying for the town's infrastructure, which is aging and needs to be replaced. And they're also having to pay reserves to replace their own neighborhood infrastructure that is going to need to be replaced. And so while it's cheaper in the short term for the homeowner, it seems that way at least, the town's playing the long game. And in the long run, it becomes much more expensive for those people because they're not benefiting from the municipal infrastructure. And in the short term, it solves the town's debt crisis, where they don't have enough money to rebuild their current infrastructure. So they get to add additional tax dollars without having to do additional repairs. And it really makes sense for the government to do that. That's why they essentially force it. That's why if you're trying, like all new neighborhoods, the Planning and Zoning Commission of these different towns and municipalities require that they be in private associations of some sort, right? Because they want the tax dollars, they don't want the expense though. So the reason why I explain that, again, even though I've made a video about it, is because it's so much easier to say don't live in an HOA from behind a keyboard when you don't understand the processes that are pushing for HOAs. Which means if you want to live in a newer house or a newer home, or something built in the last 50 years, it's probably going to be in an HOA. If you want something that's not in an HOA, you have to be willing to buy something older, which a lot of times needs maintenance and work, right? It needs to be remodeled. A lot of people don't have the skills or the time or the money to do that. So what it's doing is it's forcing all new buyers into a very specific type of market, which is the HOA market. And people who already have money buy assets that in the long term are better because there's overall less overhead, because there's no HOA dues, there's no infrastructure payments, there's no like long-term capital reserves at the municipal, or like you don't have to pay for your street to be repaved. You don't have to pay for plowing on your street. But it's becoming increasingly hard to find that. And then you have these additional mini governments that are being put in place. Now, there's a very specific problem that HOAs solve, and it has nothing to do with your preference as to whether or not you'd want to live in an HOA or not. People are being forced to live in them just due to lack of selection outside of them. We have entire towns that are being built in HOAs now. And these are in the fastest growing parts of the country. So it's just a reality of life that you're gonna have to come to accept. And most of the people saying never buy in an HOA, unless they're willing to, pony up the money and find a place that was built 50 years ago or more and remodel it, or they find a gem that might have been built 10, 20 years ago that somehow the developer got to build it outside of kind of this push towards community living, then they're very fortunate. But it's just not an option for a lot of people, especially in this real estate and economic market. So how do we escape the nightmare that is the HOA if we can't just leave HOAs altogether? So if we can't leave HOAs and we can't find homes outside of HOAs, how do we escape the nightmare? Well, the answer to that is get educated and get more involved, right? We have a training course, a training program that it's $9 a month right now, right? And it could save you thousands of dollars over the course of your lifetime just by getting educated on how HOAs work. If you live in an HOA, you can't afford not to take the course. What you're gonna learn about how they actually really work and how they're supposed to work is gonna make your experience living in an HOA so much better. And there's things we can't get away from, like annoying neighbors, right? Like a really difficult, board member with a horrible personality. They'll still probably be your neighbor, but if you're well educated and you've taken the time to develop relationships in the community like we teach you how to do, then you can save yourself from the nightmare because you'll know how to navigate the HOA world and get the right people in power and vote the right people into those positions who really represent your interests, or better yet, just run for that position yourself. And what we're finding is that most HOAs are run by, older people who are retired. And most of the people just living in an HOA who are hating the experience many times, and this isn't all the time, are younger people with families or just trying to live their life and not be bothered. And the HOA is always down their throat because it's being run by a bunch of retired or semi-retired people. And sometimes semi-retired people are great. Other times, as they get older, they become more rigid in their thinking. They become more, they don't have a lot of time on their hands, so they're just nitpicking. And you get that, quote unquote Karen out there with the clipboard and all this stuff. Well, the solution is they're probably there doing the thing because nobody else has just stood up and volunteered and taken the time to serve in that role. And is it an act of service? Is it a position of service? Absolutely. But if you live in an HOA and you're having a terrible experience and you're refusing to go to the board meetings, or you're refusing to be part of the decision-making process, or you're not willing to volunteer 1 hour a month to end your own nightmare, then that's on you, right? We're giving you the resources. We're making this content. We're teaching you everything you need to know to escape the nightmare, right? We can teach you how to get everybody on the board voted out and replace them with sane, reasonable people who you like, who are going to represent your interests well and govern over the neighborhood, over the community effectively. The point is that HOAs are here to stay. There's no escaping them. No matter how many times you comment, stay out of an HOA, people are being forced into them every day. And the government's the one doing that. And it's by design. And at a certain point, unless you want anarchy and mass revolution, which I'm sure some of you want because you like that, for the foreseeable future, it's the only way to solve a lot of the debt crises that these towns are having and these cities are having. It doesn't mean you have to live in a nightmare. It just means you have to learn how to create the dream living environment that you want. And we're here to teach you that. We're here to teach you how to turn your nightmare into a dream. We just need you to come along for the ride and subscribe to this content and let us show you, let us tell you about how to do that. Because I work in this day in and day out. I know the mechanics of how all this stuff works, and I have to deal with it every day. And I hear the complaints, and I know the personalities, and I know the difficulties, and I empathize with you guys. I didn't want to be in HOA management. I got stuck in the nightmare. I bought a condo and I was stuck in a living hell, and I was stuck in the nightmare until I said, you know what? I'm gonna take things into my own hands. I'm gonna do something about it, and I'm gonna change this. And I changed. I got on the board of directors, and I eventually got to managing the property, and I changed the entire community. And the people there loved it so much that I did it for other communities. And now I have a management company. And it's still very difficult working in the HOA space, which is why I'm making this content, because I can help more people and not burn myself out as quickly, because it's a hard job. It's a hard job to do one community, let alone 10, let alone 1,000 units. So how can I help more people? Well, it's not to just manage more properties, because then I'm gonna jump off a bridge. The answer is create content that can reach more people. And that's what this channel is all about. That's why I urge you to subscribe to this. I urge you to check out our training video. Learn how to do it. Learn how to have an enjoyable HOA experience, because the only way to escape the nightmare is to turn your nightmare into a dream. Because no matter where you run or how far you go, there'll be an HOA there waiting for you. And in the next 20 years, the non-HOA options are going to be more scarce, further and fewer between. It's not doom and gloom. It's just, let's get to work and let's make the changes that you want to see happen. We'll catch you next time. Thanks again. This is Jared with HOA Crusades. We'll talk to you later.